for coming in to meet with me for the post-observation conference. I had a great time visiting your room, seeing the work that your students were doing, as well as the different ways that you differentiated the tasks to meet the needs of the different levels of students in your class. Your enthusiasm definitely came through. You have great personality, and you're very excited about the material, and you can see that in terms of the student response. They're answering questions, they feel safe to answer a question and make a mistake knowing that they're not going to be penalized for that. I'd love to hear about how you felt the lesson went.
I thought the lesson went well. I thought it was, the mini lesson was paced effectively. The only part that I think that I would change would be that I would have more student-to-student interaction where kids are interacting with each other. Where I'm kind of acting more as the guide on the side and kind of listening in to see how students are responding to what they've learned and gained during the mini lesson.
So did you feel that you stepped in more with the answers, or just accepted an answer that the child gave in that lesson, and so in the future you would have them interacting together?
Yes, yes. And as far as me using the different types of questioning techniques, so in there I called mainly on students that had their hand raised, and it's a lot of the times the same students with their hand raised. Now, what I should have done is use my other strategy in where you have a jar, and inside the jar there's popsicle sticks. You take one out, or a child will take one out, and a random child will be called on, and that strategy works, I find, better because kids are held accountable for what it is that you're teaching them. And I think that's one of the other things that I would have changed.
I think that's great. It holds them more accountable, and those that maybe are towards the back that aren't quite as focused on the lesson, they don't know if their name is going to be called, and if it is called, they're going to have to explain or add on to something that another child has said.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great strategy for you to use in the future. I have noticed that as well with the questioning, and one thing that you may want to do when you're pulling these popsicle sticks is take a look at the Bloom's taxonomy questions, so that way you're pushing the level of questioning for the students that you're pulling, but you also can modify and choose an easier question if you know it's a child that wouldn't be able to necessarily take it from point A to point C. You can scaffold the question that way too.
Yeah.
So you're still calling on students, but you can vary the level of questioning depending on the name of the child that you call.
Okay.
In terms of the way the lesson went and the flow, was it a typical class?
Yeah, I thought it was. I thought that the mini lesson was, it was paced effectively. I know I kept it about 8 to 10 minutes. The we do went really well, and my students are able to, with the terminology that I use, are able to know when they're supposed to be listening and then when they're supposed to participate. So as far as that goes, then I would say it was a typical lesson.
Did you feel that the students met the objectives that you set out for the lesson?
Yes, I did. I felt that the learning objectives were met. I had looked at, before I planned the lesson, I had looked at what the students needed to know at the end, so planning with the end in mind. And then after the lesson was over, where I reflected on it, I looked at the data from the exit slip that I had given them, and a majority of the class did do very well. So I would say yes.
Is there anything that you feel that you would change besides the popsicle sticks going forward?
I think that the only other thing that I would change is when students are talking with each other. I know I had many of the students on task, but not all of my students were on task. So to kind of just reiterate before I release them, reiterate the responsibilities that they have for working cooperatively in groups.
Well, I think you had great tools available in the room to help them. On the whiteboard, you had stated exactly what they needed to do to be successful during independent work.
Mhm.
You also had binders on the table, so that way if the students got confused or forgot during the lesson, they had it right there to access. And I also saw students interacting with one another. So there was one child who said he had no idea how to solve the problem on his own, and one of the other boys stepped in right away and said, well, you could ask me, or you could look in the binder for the anchor chart that Mr. Pasquarelli created for us. So while there were maybe a few students who weren't quite sure what to do, you definitely had the resources available to them to help them. And the students were held accountable for that. So to see the students jumping in and explaining what another child could do to be successful in it, I think shows also the culture that you created in the room.
Yeah.
Are there any other?
I have two of my students are from Yemen. They one of them has only been here since last May. The other one's been here a little bit longer, but both of them do struggle immensely with the English language. So I struggle with them as far as how they can function in the classroom during the math block. So I'm kind of trying to figure out a way where they can function and be successful at the tasks that they're given.
Well, actually, I did notice that while I was in the room observing the lesson, and I do know that it is a struggle to have students who don't speak the language at all, and speaking Arabic where there isn't anyone else really in the school to help support that is a challenge. So I found these resources that I had actually used a few years ago when I had a child who only spoke Arabic. And what you can do, what worked for this child that I taught a number of years ago, was that I gave them the numbers and I gave them pictures of everyday items in English, but it also had the Arabic translation. And while they may not be able to speak the Arabic or read the Arabic translation on there, they can speak. They know what it's supposed to say verbally. So what I would suggest you try to do is show them these pictures, ask them to say it in Arabic to you,
Right.
and then you repeat right back the English word. So that way they get used to hearing the English translation for the word. And I wouldn't shove it all at them at once, but start off with the most important words that they would need in an everyday classroom life, and then you can work your way up. And the same with the numbers, especially since they're not going to be able to communicate as well with the math. If they start getting used to what the numbers look like, what it sounds like, you will see a greater participation from them in math. And then what you can do is have another child in the room who is fluent and is expressive to practice these words with them. And then after that, we can move forward to see where we can help further support you and these students in learning the English language. So I actually have the write-up of the observation here that I want you to take a look at. But if you feel that you have evidence in other areas that you want me to take into consideration, feel free to bring that with you, and we can discuss that.
Okay. So would you suggest that I put this on maybe each one of their desks so that they can, I guess, use it more frequently? And
I think that's a great idea. And then even if they're not speaking because they're not at that level yet, they can point to the numbers that they think. And I know we've spoken about modifying the tasks for them since they're not able to work on word problems and all that. So I think that this would be a great tool for them to use while you're modifying those activities for them.
okay.
this to help you, and keep it handy, because we should be using whatever we have to help guide us every day. The more we use it, the better we'll get at reminding ourselves to use it.
Yeah,
So I think if you keep this near where you keep your popsicle sticks, I think it'll help get you into the habit of asking those questions. And again, I think, like you said, calling on other students with those popsicle sticks will help keep the rest of the class accountable.
yeah, and possibly even while I'm planning the lesson, to have
Definitely.
this by my side, to just kind of guide me and to make sure I have all, if not all the areas, many of the areas in my plan.
Definitely. And if there's anything else that I can do to help support you, my door is always open. Feel free to
Absolutely.
ask.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.